Hello and welcome to today's question on the resurrection of Jesus. Today's question is: are there any historical accounts outside the Bible that support the resurrection of Jesus? That's a great question, especially for anyone exploring the historical side of faith. So, let's get into it. Now, let's be honest right from the start. When it comes to direct eyewitness reports of Jesus' resurrection outside the New Testament, we don't actually have any. The clearest and earliest stories about the resurrection come from within the Christian tradition itself, through the Gospels, the letters of Paul, and other New Testament writings. These were written by people who claimed to be eyewitnesses or were closely connected to those who were. And these texts form the foundation of the Christian belief in the resurrection. But that doesn't mean that's all we have. There are a few interesting clues from history that show how belief in the resurrection spread across the ancient world. First, let's talk about the early Christian writers, often called the Church Fathers. They lived just a few generations after the apostles. Now, they weren't eyewitnesses themselves, but their writings show us how strongly the resurrection belief was held in the early church. They wrote about it, defended it, and many were even willing to die for it. That tells us how central the resurrection was, even outside the pages of the Bible. Now let's look at some non-Christian sources from around the 1st and 2nd centuries. One name you might hear is Flavius Josephus, a Jewish historian who lived in the 1st century. In his book Antiquities of the Jews, he mentions Jesus and includes a part that says, Jesus rose from the dead. But here's the thing: scholars are still debating whether that part was written by Josephus himself or added later by Christian editors. Still, it shows that Jesus was known as a real historical person even outside Christian circles. Then there's Tacitus, a Roman historian who definitely wasn't a fan of Christians. In his work, Annals, he talks about Jesus being crucified under Pontius Pilate and how this new superstition, as he called it, was spreading quickly across the Roman Empire. He doesn't directly mention the resurrection, but clearly he saw how powerful this movement had become. Another voice from that time is Pliny the Younger, a Roman governor who wrote a letter to Emperor Trajan around the year 112. He describes how early Christians used to gather before dawn and sing hymns to Christ as to a god. Again, no direct mention of the resurrection, but it shows just how deeply these believers were convinced that Jesus, who had been crucified, was now alive and worthy of worship. So, no, we don't have a Roman historian standing at the empty tomb with a notebook writing everything down. But we do have a trail of historical echoes, hints, and glimpses of a belief that transformed lives, crossed cultures, and caught the world's attention. And at the center of it all, the New Testament accounts, written by those who claimed to see, touch, and walk with the risen Jesus. For believers, these testimonies are more than just stories, they are life changing truths. We'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the resurrection? Share them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this presentation, don't forget to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay blessed.